Hello everyone, today I'm going to be discussing something bad, and as you can see by the title, these are a certain category of movies that I think a lot of people know, and I thought it'd be interesting to have this as sort of my first discussion because it seems like a lot of people associate these categories of films to be not just bad, but just super bad, in that they show the complete unnecessariness, I guess, of their existence. And that, as you can see by the title, is Disney sequels. The interesting thing about Disney sequels is that they started in the 90s, actually, right around when Disney was popular, and for some reason they thought that these straight-to DVD sequels would somehow allow them to generate more revenue, and assuming that a lot of the public has already seen their first film, they automatically think that a sequel will warrant the public's interest. And to be quite honest, the whole concept of a Disney sequel is a little, I guess you could say, not only unnecessary, but just very, very strange, because the way that the original Disney classics sort of end is not in any way, shape, or form a film or series of films that would warrant a sequel. They're just not. You could make the argument, I think, for some. I guess you could make that argument for maybe something like Peter Pan, or maybe with Cinderella, but overall it seems like that these films that Disney's already created don't really necessarily need something to back them up or make them better. It's not that any of these films aren't perfect, it's just that there's no reason to try to make them over again. And a lot of the times these Disney sequels end up sort of being kind of a remake of the original tale that Disney tells, because even though it has different characters, a different sort of plot, you'll see the resemblances like immediately in a lot of these sequels. Not all, but in a lot of them. Little Mermaid 2, basically, again, just kind of a rehash of what already happened in the first movie. I think you could make the argument that Beauty and the Beast sort of repeats the same kind of formula too, except it just happens to take place at around Christmas time. But oh my lord, where to begin with these sequels? These sequels can range from to mildly bad to the point where they're not necessarily I guess destroying what originally Disney tried to do with their original classic film, but they do really twist it and make it just a horrible cash grab. I just don't know how any of these sequels are salvageable. I don't see how they're giving value to their company. It's really odd. And the funny thing is and the Nostalgia chick kind of described this, I think, really well, is that a lot of these sequels are kind of like television shows, in that they have kind of the television show style animation. They have the television show style pace. It's very simplistic. It doesn't take really its time to flesh everything out. It just kind of feels very cardboard. and that's not just from the animation, that's from the characters, the story. It just feels so hollow that there's really nothing there that's adding anything to what the original classic was trying to say. And that's my major problem with Disney sequels, and why I think they're bad, because they don't provide anything new or innovative or interesting. Now, I am going to mention that there is a couple of exceptions to the Disney sequel rule. One being Fantasia 2000, because I feel that that was a good remake, despite the celebrity appearances. I felt like the sequences of animation, the emotions, were all present in that sequel. And also The Rescuers Down Under, which was a sequel to The Rescuers. The interesting thing, though, is that with those sequels, they knew what to do to make it more interesting and to give a different take. Fantasia 2000 was trying to have that serious Fantasia style, but also have different different ranges of music. Mostly Fantasia was classical music, and in Fantasia 2000 you get a sense of different kinds of music throughout. So it was trying to offer something different and unique that we haven't seen. And although I don't think Fantasia 2000 holds up to the original Fantasia, I still feel it's an honorable sequel. Like, I could understand why Disney would make this. It's the same with Rescuers Down Under. It has a similar story and premise going for it, but there's different characters, there's a different plot, and it doesn't feel like it's a rehash of what the first movie was. But despite those two, those are really the only two that really I feel were good sequels. Rest of Disney sequels are they're just awful. There's just no other word that I can just describe these sequels to anyone. It's just I feel like that they were a waste of time, they were a waste of trees, they were a waste of animators' talents. They were just there for the sake of making a couple of extra bucks. And I understand Disney's a company like any other movie company. It is a lot about money, and I understand that. But effort needs to be put into things and into art, I feel. And I honestly feel that these sequels lack any kind of solid effort. I'm sure there was people that worked hard on these sequels. I'm not denying that. But I feel like that the ultimate final product is just so horrendous and just kind of ruins a lot of what the original classics were trying to say. You definitely get this with, I think, Mulan. You get this with Pocahontas too. You get this with a lot of the Disney sequels. And again, the interesting thing too is this: not only did they make a couple of these direct-to-DVD sequels, they made a ton. And boy, did they make the ones that really were iconic to them. There's 2 Aladdin sequels, 2 and 3. There's a Little Mermaid sequel. There's, even for their not as popular films, there's a sequel. There's a Brother Bear 2 sequel. There's a Bambi sequel. There is a Lion King sequel. There is a Beauty and the Beast sequel. I can just kind of go on. There's just a ton. I almost want to say it probably a lot of their 2D animated films, even the older ones, got a sequel. Cinderella, again, got 2 sequels. And the only 3, I think, that were not touched by a sequel were Snow White, or actually 3, Dumbo, Pinocchio, and The Sword and the Stone. 4 there. I've named 4, but literally almost every Disney classic movie, whether really popular or not really popular, Black Cauldron also, I guess 5. 5 that didn't get a sequel. But almost every other, the majority, I would say, of the Disney 2D animated films had at least one sequel. Some maybe a spin-off television series or other things as well, but majority sequel. Now, it's not to say that I've seen all of these sequels and that I know for certain that all of them are bad, but the majority of them, I feel, they're just not necessary. We don't need you to tell us the same story. Again, I understand that The Lion King is, the Lion King sequel was following more of a Romeo and Juliet, and the first one was doing Hamlet. And it seemed like that they did try to put some genuine effort into that one. I heard Bambi 2 was actually not as bad, but still these sequels, they just don't hold up to anything that the original did. And the problem I have with that is, why make them? Why bother? You already have something. You don't need to add more. There's just no point. Just move on and spend your efforts on trying to make something that's actually really good. And when you just look at how badly these sequels are constructed, it's very shameful almost. It just sucks all of the dignity and likability you had of the first movie right out of you. And I feel a lot of people feel this way when they saw some of these sequels. And again, I think they all range for people as to how bad or how not as bad some of these are. From what I heard, Bambi 2 wasn't that bad, and Lion King 2 I actually saw, which wasn't that bad. But at the same time, they're not necessary. I don't feel that any of these classics warrant a sequel, really. I don't think that we really need to know certain things that was going on. I mean, I guess since Bambi's kind of like a mid-cool, it kind of makes sense that you'd probably want to explain like what he was going through his life, but it doesn't feel like it captures the emotion that the first movie captured, and I don't really see a point in just making a movie for that purpose of showing something that, oh yeah, we haven't seen before, but it was there in the original story, we just didn't show it to you. You know, you could show that on like a television special, or you don't need to make a full-blown movie out of it. I just feel that a lot of them are really unnecessary. They don't add anything to what Disney was originally trying to say, and I really just don't. I just think that they suck a lot of the true essence of the characters out. You'll see this with the Aladdin sequels. You'll see this with the Pocahontas sequel. I think a lot of people were really mad that they made John Smith a jerk just so that she could go with the guy that she really actually went with in real life. And that's really the only historically accurate thing they have in that entire movie, so it doesn't make any sense to have a sequel on that just because, oh, we want to be historically accurate. Oh, okay. You got the fact that she marries a John Smith right, but the way you handled it was just so... Ooh, it was just, it just doesn't add anything. And the Mulan sequel, completely unnecessary, doesn't add anything. And the fact that they make Mushu the villain is just shows that they slopped this thing together and didn't think anything through. And you feel like too that none of the characters like learn something from the original story, which I find to be rather interesting. That none of these sequels attempt to have the characters learn anything from what they originally learned. With Ariel's character, she doesn't learn the same lesson that her father learned in the story. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, Disney, you rehashed everything and put Ariel in Triton's place. Oh, great. Yeah, Joy. Oh, she didn't learn that from the first movie. Really, Disney. Despite all the stuff that she went through, she didn't learn that, heck, maybe I should just let people live, or figure out a different way than trying to hide my child from the ocean. Oh, such a stupid plot. And you have these characters that are either just completely are non-representative of the original classic, or you've got characters that are like way more annoying and way more obnoxious. I personally thought, what's her face, Kiara, even when I was a child in the Lion King sequel, I thought that she was annoying and always just trying to act like she's some tough girl or whatever, and she just didn't come off as likable at all. And just the lengths that she goes to be like, yeah, I improved myself and blah blah blah, and I'm gonna put myself in perilous dangers and be stupid. She kind of drove me nuts throughout that movie. And then you have people like Melody in Little Mermaid, who I thought was really annoying too, and kind of didn't have the personality traits that were appealing, that were in the first movie that Ariel had. Like, she does have that sense of exploration, but that's it. There's nothing else. And if you think about it, I feel like she's a little bit more stupid than Ariel was, because, I mean, Ariel makes it clear to, she actually goes to her and says, you shouldn't hand that thing over. With Ariel, within the first movie, the only person that really warned her about Ursula was Sebastian, and obviously Ariel at this point wasn't going to take Sebastian seriously. So yeah, it's just, I just felt like her daughter came out as being more of a stupid character, and had nothing really to contribute to a story that's already been retold, again. So that drove me up the walls. It drove me up the walls too in Hunchback, when they made the characters so bland. It drove me up the walls when in Mulan 2 you have all of these unnecessary plot points, and I really, it really made me not like Mulan in the second movie, especially when she was forcing her values onto these other girls, and it just tarnishes everything. Like, it takes away the depth that the first film had. It just sucks it away. It's just not there anymore. I just don't understand. Like, with all these sequels, it seems like that they sucked any bit of emotion of depth, of intrigue, and they just sucked it completely dry, and all you're left is with this really stale animation, these awfully written characters, and characters that you've seen before but are completely different. Beauty and the Beast is another example. Belle tries to be nice to the Beast even though he's still a jerk. And the thing is that she didn't start being nice to him until he started showing that he was trying to change and trying to actually let down his defenses. His defenses are still up in the hoo-has in the sequel. There's no sense for her to want to suddenly impress him or want to be around him because he's just such a jerk. And the villains, oh my gosh, the villains in Disney sequels, they get downgraded like you think that these villains, we treat these villains as these glorious pieces of entertainment in the classics. You should see them in the sequels, my god. Second Hunchback movie. First movie, Frollo is I guess you could say is considered to be sort of racially insensitive. He's very lustful, he's very vengeful, he's very manipulative and controlling. He's all the traits that you want in a villain. And he's in a Disney movie. Those are pretty deep. Especially also the fact that he believes he's sort of a soldier of God, but he's really not. He's just kind of a hypocrite. So you have that guy in the original Hunchback. Guess what's in the sequel? A magician who is probably who's very femmy and is fairly narcissistic. That's all you get in the sequel. It's just so laughable. Oh my gosh. The villain in The Little Mermaid is completely the same as Ursula. The only thing that's different is the fact that she's the sister. That's it. There's nothing different than her. The only thing different is her design and the fact that she's her sister. The same voice actress plays her. The same voice actress. Disney was like, we'll just keep everything the same as the original. We'll just not really improve upon it or try to make it interesting. And so you have a rehash of villains. What was another villain that was really just good? Oh yeah, Mushu as the villain in, and then there's some thieves, but you only see them in one scene. But yeah, Mushu is the villain in the second Mulan movie. Even though he turns good at the end, it still makes it perfectly clear though in these sequels that these characters have learned nothing. Like literally Mushu is still an egotistical jerk and really annoying, and more obnoxious than in the first movie. In the first movie, I thought Eddie Murphy was okay. I just thought that he just kind of, I mean, he needed to be serious when he needed to be serious, but I just felt that at times, just the fact that he was just doing this whole fast talking or whatever, I just felt like it worked more with Donkey than it worked for Mushu, the character. But despite the point, he wasn't as bad. But in the second movie, he just goes completely like berserk and almost on a more on a worser level than he originally was in the first movie. Like, it's just unbelievable. Like what they decide to do with these characters. Everything that comes up on the screen just makes me want to say, no, what you're doing is wrong. Like, this isn't right. This is not what you should be doing, Disney. Yeah. It's just everything that comes out of these sequels. I just go, what? Like, no, just no. And not only is it the villains, the heroes, and the animation that gets a big downgrade, it's also the songs. Good gravy, Marie, the songs. Oh my lord. These songs. Some of them might be okay, like Lion King 2, I'll kind of give a pass on. They're kind of, I think, a little bit bland, but they're still nice-ish. All the other ones, completely just a complete waste. I mean, just the songs that they come up with are just very bland for me, and they don't suck me into the emotions. They don't get me invested in what the characters are doing or saying. I just want to fast forward through the songs just so I can get through the movie quicker, because I just can't sit there and enjoy the songs, because the songs are not likable. They're kind of, they feel forced, I think, at times. They don't feel like that they are these songs that people can really identify with and grasp. And they're just very simplistic and just bland. I don't know what else to say about the songs. They just don't incorporate the things that Disney likes to do in their musical numbers. So you've got horrible villains, bad characters, and bad songs. And not only can the plots be either repetitious or sort of similar to something that Disney originally did with their classic, but sometimes the plots are like, really, like, you made this plot, that this is your plot. What? Like, for example, the Fox and the Hound sequel, they basically go to like this circus/carnival, and then there's this one performer who's like a villain, and oh my, it's just something that you'd see on television. It's something that you wouldn't see in like maybe a half an hour, 15-minute special. It's not something that you would see in an entire movie. You just wouldn't see it. It just would not happen. And oh my. For example, there's also the fact that although there's maybe some elements of Disney sequels that maybe actually could have been incorporated into the original work and have made the original work maybe a little bit better, the main crux of the main elements of Disney sequels are just so bad that it doesn't leave me with anything that can be redeemable. Just maybe some little tidbits. For example, like in Pocahontas 2, Radcliffe sort of plays with Pocahontas' kind of emotions when it comes to animals. And he sort of uses it that way as sort of his plot, whereas in the first movie he was just kind of like, yeah, let's just go dig gold, and if they come, we'll try to shoot them or whatever. If the natives come, we'll try to shoot them. You know, that was his plan in the original movie, but in the sequel it's kind of a little bit more interesting. But you can't save that. You can't say that makes that film salvageable, because everything else, the main points that you need in a film, are not there. And he's as bland as ever. What they do to John Smith, I think, is very tasteless, because they take him and they make him a jerk for no reason. Well, they do make him for the one reason only. They only make him a jerk just so that she could go off with somebody else, with Ralph instead of John Smith. And I apologize if I said John Smith earlier. I meant to say John Rolfe. Ugh, please get that confused. And the thing is John Rolfe never impressed me at all. I mean, in the beginning, he comes off as kind of like this, I almost want to say he comes off as very, you know, he doesn't seem really sensitive to their culture, or he doesn't seem to, like, want to learn anything about them. He just wants to get a job done. And then somehow in the process this makes them fall in love. It's so contrived. It's very contrived. I mean, you could make an argument within the first movie if the love was a little bit contrived, but in this movie, my God, it is contrived. It's like, we are gonna force these two together because that's what actually happened in real life. And it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I just can't explain how ridiculously stupid that is. Peter Pan 2, another sequel that I've had the unfortune of seeing, is kind of a rehash. You know, except Jane might be a little bit different than her mom, Wendy, in a sense, and but at the same time, you're just doing the same thing over again. And the thing is they got rid of the crocodile, and they replaced it with this puppy, this popping octopus. Oh yes, that's what will get the kids all scared of freaking octopus running around and making pop pop noises and just why did you have to do this, Disney? Just no, there's no point in making this a sequel. We get the whole message. The message is the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. You don't need to do this again. Like, it just drives me up the walls. What else? The problem that the major problem, I guess this would be the pinnacle of why I really don't like Disney sequels, at least the majority of them, or I don't find them as good as the original works. The reason why I don't like Disney sequels, the main reason, here's characters and plot and all that stuff down here, but the main reason that I don't particularly care for Disney sequels is because I don't think they were made for the purpose of trying to improve their original works, improve their stories, improve characters, so on and so forth. Or they weren't done to try to explore something new, even though you could make an argument that Bambi 2 kind of does that, but at the same time it doesn't hold up to the same amount as the original, so why bother? Why just not show it in like a short film on television, or, you know, just it's just not material that's worth a movie. It's just not, in my honest opinion. And that's a reason, I think, why they went straight to DVD. That's a reason why I think some of them actually did make it into theaters. I almost want to say it might have been Peter Pan 2 and Little Mermaid, I remember being advertised that they went to theaters. But I could be wrong. But all the others, pretty much straight to DVD. Like we have no shame, and we can just throw whatever we can throw whatever at your kids' faces, and they'll watch it. And they'll be happy because they'll be watching something from Disney. And to me, that's an insult to children's intelligence. It's an insult to what the original work was trying to say. But mainly, it's just and the most important thing, and I think the pinnacle thing is that Disney sequels are sort of an insult to Disney itself. Because they say, we're selling out to you. We're gonna talk down to you now, audience. Because we've been around for all of these years, and now we can put in less time, put in less effort, and slap the same title and put a 2 next to it, or put an Enchanted Christmas logo on it, and you'll buy it for your kids to watch. Because we have your childhood. Because we have been there for all of these years. And we're a cultural, artistic phenomena. And we are going to sell ourselves cheap to you. We're just gonna do it because we can. And to me, that's really, when I really think about it, that's the real reason why Disney sequels bother me so much, is because they are designed to be bad. They're not designed to hold up to any of the original work's value. They're designed to be bad. They're designed to be cheap. You know, it's like if your family, every year gave you something special, and each year they always gave you something special and something different, and then one year they decide to give you something so crappy, so worthless, something that you didn't even want, and something that's completely of no use or value to you. That's how it feels when you're watching a Disney sequel. At least that's how it feels for me. Because when I'm watching it, I'm going, this is Disney? Like, this does not make any sense. And the reason being is they feel like and the thing is to think that they felt like that they could do that to the people who've enjoyed their classics over so many years, that they could just slap these sequels together and just sell it and say, yep, that's a Disney sequel, go and watch it, you'll enjoy it, you'll like it, because we're Disney. And no, just because you're Disney doesn't mean that you don't hold the amount of criticism you can get from your works. And I think we've seen, this was really, I think, the trend. This is when we started to see Disney fall. I think this is really what started Disney's downward spiral, was the fact that they decided, let's be cheap and let's make these sequels. As we continue to make maybe some of these good films, and we'll continue to make crap and continue that streak, and people will buy into it because we're Disney. Because we can just slap a logo and say we're Disney. And I think personally Walt would have been ashamed. I think he would be, he probably, if he heard that all these sequels were remade, I bet you if he heard, because they just don't rehash the ones that were in the 90s. No, they rehash the ones that were within Walt's prime. Like Cinderella got 2. Bambi got a sequel. Yeah, it just makes you want to say why. And to me, that's very cheap. And that's a huge problem I have with these Disney sequels. And I feel like that it was really the trend that started Disney from going from their huge hiatus all the way down to rock bottom. Or up to their high point, down to rock bottom. Just complete waste of time and energy that they could have saved the money for to make something good. Still won't make sense to me. And I think it's also too when we started seeing Disney going more for being cheap. You know, that's why we see all these cheap Disney Channel shows. Not all of them I think are cheap, but majority of them are. And if you look at the stars, you know those little Disney princess life stars like Miley Cyrus and you know Demi Lovato and then Selena Gomez and all those people, like, and you just look at it and go, this is cheap Disney, and this is not timeless anymore. This is just cheap. There's no other word for me to describe this kind of trend but cheap. It's going for the lowest common denominator, the lowest brow of humor that's really not funny to begin with. It's really dumbing things down. And that bothers me. That bothers me a lot. And not only did I think this start this trend, but we've seen this in other productions and other companies too. Like we've seen this with Shrek when they started to rehash the 3rd movie and then rehash for a 4th movie. We've seen this with Pixar. Even recently, they're pretty much rehashing the same thing. Cars 2, Monsters University. Now we have Planes, which is pretty much a exact ripoff of Cars that you just go, wow, you're not even trying anymore. And it's clear. And I think this trend in animation can be attributed to these Disney sequels. These Disney sequels are the ones that started this idea of in media, we can be cheap. We can dumb down our material. No, we don't need to try to go for emotion or try to be interesting. And I'm not saying that every Disney film needs to take itself completely seriously. I saw The Emperor's New Groove and was totally fine with it. But there's just a point where it just becomes too cheap, to where you're not putting in any effort into the emotions and to the characters, the story, or anything. You're just dumbing it down and saying we can be cheap and we can achieve the lowest of the low that we can go. Because why? Because we're Disney. And I think Pixar has developed this kind of mentality too. Now that we're Pixar, now that we've made all of this money, let's go and be cheap, and let's not really put in a lot of time and effort into what we do. You know why? Because people will buy into it anyway. You know why they will buy into it anyway? Because we're Pixar. It's the brand that makes it so that they can make schlock. Like, they know this. It's a trend that's happened, and it's really started with this bad thing called Disney sequels. It's really what started it. I'm sure there's people that could argue that, yeah, there's been other forms of media that have done sequels before, and again, it was this whole kind of idea of a cash grab. Yes, But I think in particular with animation, it was really with Disney to where it started with this sequel trend of, yeah, we can somehow talk down to our audience. We can somehow slap a 2 next to our beloved classic, and we can downgrade it in every way, shape, or form and make it not as good as the original, and people will still buy into it and people will still like it. You know why? Because it's Disney. And I think when I was a child, I did have this mentality of thinking, no, it's not dumbed down, it's Disney. You know, it's Disney. It's what I grew up with. It's what I know. I know these kinds of stories. You know, these are good works. You know, they should be. And as more as I got older, I realized as to how cheap a lot of these sequels were, and it really bothered me. And it bothered me so much just looking at it as an adult, because it does feel very, very cheap, and lacks the effort that you would expect from a Disney film. And not only did it start maybe with their sequels, but I would argue too with this kind of home on the range simplicity, where you have very bland songs, very bland characters, everything's chippy, happy, go lucky, and the characters don't really learn anything or are not entertaining or interesting to watch. It just shows throughout these sequels. And I really don't know what else I can say about these sequels. I would say avoid watching these. They're not necessary. There's no point in having your child watch a Jungle Book 2. There's no point in your child looking at The Little Mermaid 2. There's no point in, I would even say, The Lion King 2, because it's just a rehashing of the same thing. It's just telling, the only thing that is changing is just the plot. And the plot is that, oh yeah, it revolves around Romeo and Juliet this time. It's not Hamlet. You know, it's just cheap to me. It doesn't hold the water, and it doesn't hold the charm or the depth that these other films captured. And it makes me so, it just makes me want to just facepalm or like just cringe at just hearing Disney's sequel. And I figure that the best thing, at least for me, is to pretend that they don't exist. And if I can live in a world of imagination, you know, Disney, I can live in a world where I imagine that these sequels don't exist. And I'm just going to picture life that way, because I think it has bothered an immense amount of people and I think this is really what really bothered people, was the fact that it was really a cheap gimmick. And it was this idea of, yeah, we can talk down to you now because we've made all of these good films now. Now we can talk down to you, and now we can feed you something horrible now because we're Disney. You know, I know that not all of the first films of Disney were hugely spectacular and free from flaws, and again, all films have flaws in them. But it's just the effort. You can see that there was effort put into the original works, despite maybe some kinds of formulas that were maybe within the plot, or there maybe were characters that weren't really as interesting, but there was this kind of emotional depth to a lot of Disney's original works. And to see that all be brought down to a lower level than that, I just think that says something. And just because there might be some elements within the Disney sequels that might have done something that might be a little bit more interesting than maybe what the original work was doing. It still doesn't account for the fact that it suffers from the major problems, like I said. And I feel like the major issue that I have with them as the pinnacle issue is just the fact that they are cheap and that they're trying to kind of sell out to the audience, and I don't appreciate that, and I don't think that's fair. Regardless, whether you buy one product here, one product there, you want to at least know that you're getting something out of it and some kind of a value. And to be honest, there's really nothing I see in value with these sequels because they're just unnecessary. They're a rehash and they don't offer anything new. You could argue though, maybe for Bambi too, because again, it was touching on things that really weren't there in the original story, but again, they didn't need a whole freaking movie to explain this. So I'm not trying to be too harsh. I'm not trying to be overly critical of these sequels, but I just feel like that even though the original works have their flaws, of course I'm not going to say that they are perfect too, but I feel like that the major downgrades that were brought to the sequels made them, I think, unworthy for people to watch. I just don't see why you would watch the sequel when you can watch the original. It just doesn't make any sense to me, at least. Like, why bother? There's really no point. And I wish I could say more, but I could probably go on all night on like a ranting rampage here. But regardless, if you do like some Disney sequels, if you do like all Disney sequels, this is nothing against your opinion or you as a person or anybody. I just feel like, in my opinion, looking at it from an adult perspective, it just made me realize how cheap it was and how gimmicky the idea was. And I felt like that's really what made me angry, was just the fact that they thought that they could be cheap and that they thought that they could talk down to people who appreciate their works. Like my mom, she bought me Pocahontas 2 when I was little, and she thought that I would like it because it was like Pocahontas. Second one must be good, right? And even though I tried to watch it a couple of times and thinking, maybe I just need to watch it again, it's Disney, right? Like, and every time I felt disappointed for some reason. And I was a child, so I kind of really didn't understand back then. But then now, really looking at it, I just go, wow, now I know. It's just because that it was cheap and it was slopped together and doesn't offer anything new or anything that would hold to what the original work was saying. It's just I just can't. It's just unbearable. I personally just can't stand Disney sequels. I just wouldn't recommend people buying them for their children or having them watch it, or I would just leave it out of out of any child's existence, to be honest. Because they're just that bad. But I think that's really all I can say. And again, this is just sort of my opinion. I mean, I do feel that these sequels are bad. It just varies again from, how bad, is Lion 2 all that bad. It's not that bad, but still they're bad because they don't offer anything. They just don't offer anything. That's just plain and simple. They just don't offer anything to their audience. and that's the main issue that I have with them. They just don't give the audience anything to be invested in. And I know there's some people who might have seen some of the sequels and have been like, oh yeah, it was nothing like the original, or the ones that that really, because I think there's some sequels out there that bother more people than other Disney sequels. I think for me, Pocahontas 2, Mulan 2, Hunchback Notre Dame, those three really bothered me. Little Mermaid 2 really bothered me. Certain parts of The Lion King 2 bothered me. But I think there's tons of different opinions on this, but in my honest and humblest of opinions, I just feel that they are just bad. I just think that they're bad. I just don't think that they're good, and I think people should avoid them like the plague. But if you want to watch them, and if you find some enjoyment out of them, then great. You know, it's art. It's all subjective to your opinion, but I feel like that they just don't hold a candle to the original work. And it's not just the animation, it's also the characters, it's also just the writing and the fact that they were trying to be cheap. And if you can kind of see where I'm coming from, and looking it through my perspective and watch the Disney sequels, I think you will understand where I'm coming from. It doesn't mean that you have to agree, or doesn't mean you have to disagree either, but at the same time, that's just how I felt after really examining this as an adult. But yeah, I think that's really all I can say about this topic. I think it's really been a trend in animation, and trying to buy you, and I don't Disney, you don't own me. I'm sorry, but you don't. I may enjoy your works, but you don't own me as a person, and you're not just gonna buy me out with everything that comes out. That's gonna be from you. And I've discovered that, and I totally embrace that. And these sequels give me more reason to avoid certain aspects that I feel are just cheap within the Disney company. But I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody.